left to right, Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get a hell yeah!
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Party on Broad. It is Dives, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. On tap for today, we are going to talk about the Eagles and review position by position and give them a grade. Joining us today, we have Steven Conrad Jr. Follow him on Twitter at PhillyFanaticYT. And make sure you also check out his YouTube channel, Philly Sports Fanatic. He did an awesome breakdown with Justin as well on the last Sixers game versus the Dallas Mavericks. Let's not talk about that second half, but we can talk about his top takeaways from the Eagles that can be found on the paintedlines.com. What's up, Steven?
Nothing much, guys. A week passed from that Seahawks game, the tragic ending to that. That's been off my chest now. I feel a lot better, and I'm looking forward to how the Eagles attack this offseason. And, of course, the Sixers are also on, too, so it's exciting to watch both of these seasons play out.
Awesome stuff. Ready to get started?
Talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Let's go position by position. We're going to start with the offense. Let's start with quarterback. Carson Wentz, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 2 fourth-quarter comebacks, 4 game-winning drives. Let's talk about Josh McCown, 18 of 24 versus the Seattle Seahawks on a torn hamstring. Steven, how would you grade the quarterback position? Go ahead, man.
All right, well, as a whole, I mean, going into the season, I remember talking about it before the season even started with you, Chris, the high expectations we had and everything. But, injuries became a big factor year to year, affecting both sides of the ball, especially skilled positions. And you can argue we're not even strong at certain skilled positions anyway. So that really hindered this team's success, especially at the quarterback position. Considering all those things, I know Carson had his struggles and stuff like that. I think it was really easy to zero in on his struggles just due to the fact that the team wasn't winning games. They were struggling to even have a 500 record. But once they finally got the right guys in there, the right personalities, he really kind of, I guess you could say, put the team on his back and did what a true franchise quarterback is supposed to do, and that's lead the guys, lead the locker room, and make a playoff run. And it's really unfortunate the way it ended that last game there. But if I were to grade the quarterback position, I know Josh McCown, I think he did get snaps, a couple snaps against, it's week 2 or 3 maybe. Carson left the game for a couple snaps. Obviously McCown playing in the playoff game there. I'd give it a B+, considering all the circumstances and everything like that. So I feel pretty good about the quarterback position this season. I'd give it a B+.
Okay, how about you, Justin?
Yep. Do you want me to go? All right. So I'd give it a B+ as well. Obviously, Carson Wentz has discussion this season. I'd say the majority is now on his side after this season, and there's still a few out there. Some of us know who they are that are against Wentz still, but he played well for what he had. He had 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. One was a Hail Mary against the Dolphins at the end of the game. Could be 6, And then we also had a good stat out there from Vic, the Philly pod, that he had 4,000 yards without a receiver over 500 yards. That's still an incredible stat, no matter if you think about it, even though Alshon had 492 yards. He got hurt, but Alshon probably would only had 600 yards, my bet, around there, even if the season was over. So he really didn't have much help. Obviously, injuries didn't, help him with that. And then the only main thing I saw from him was obviously the fumbling, which can get worked on over the offseason. That's not that big of a deal. It's a big deal, obviously, that after the game, but it's not a huge thing that can't be fixed. And then Josh McCown, obviously, when he had to come, he stepped in, did some things, but in the red zone, he didn't capitalize. He could in the playoffs, and that's something that Wentz is the best at. And also another stat from Vic I saw on Twitter: in the red zone in the last 3 years, Carson has 60 touchdowns and 1 interception. So Carson Wentz is exceptional in the red zone, and it was something that they lacked in that game once he got out. So yeah, I'd give it a B+ this season.
Yeah, you touched on it. The fumbles are big, man. 17 fumbles. That was second most in the NFL. But when you look back at Carson Wentz and all the adversity, all the changing parts, all the injuries, not just at wide receiver, but also on the offensive line, Brandon Brooks going down, Lane Johnson going down. Lane Johnson missed those 2 games against Seattle. We're going to get into Lane Johnson soon. So, you look at the numbers with Lane Johnson, and Carson Wentz, they're really good. I'm right around that B+, man. B+ across the board. Let's move on to running back. Let's talk about Miles Sanders, dude. I mean, 1,327 total yards of offense this season, 6 total touchdowns, 50 receptions, 8th most all-purpose yards in the NFL. Not much more you can say about Miles Sanders. I think he had like 2 fumbles in 1 game in September, and after that, dude, he was outstanding. And then Boston Scott, dude, just if anyone earned a spot other than Greg Ward on this roster next year, it is Boston Scott. And then Jordan Howard. When Jordan Howard is playing, he looked great. Lead us off, Justin. What was your grade on the running back position, man?
I'd give it an overall A. I mean, all 3 of those guys that you named came in and stepped up and they made big plays. I mean, Miles Sanders struggled in the beginning, but he's a rookie. That's expected. But really cool to see him develop literally right in front of our eyes, like find the holes better, not bounce outside every play. And then obviously it was a big surprise in the passing game, which was something that people thought he lacked in college, was passing. His like ability to catch balls for the quarterback. Yeah, I mean, I was just really happy with the whole running back crew. Deuce Staley's obviously a great running back coach, and people are thinking about him getting promoted to offensive coordinator. We'll see how that plays out. But I really think Deuce really does get an A+ for helping develop all these guys throughout the season.
Go ahead, Steven.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Justin. I feel so comfortable giving these guys, if you want to argue A+, whatever you want to do there. That position was absolutely loaded this year. And when you really look back and think about it, Howie Roseman gave up, a 5th-round pick for Jordan Howard. And there's some people who are not sure if they want to bring him back or not after the season. I personally would. I love his skill set, what he brings to this team. Miles Sanders proved to be the lead back towards the end of the season. He can do everything. He's your do-it-all kind of back. And honestly, I think he really benefited from having fresh legs, and that's why I would really consider re-signing Jordan Howard. And you guys brought up Boston Scott. That's a guy, I mean, you're seeing like Darren Sproles comparisons. Schematically, Sanders and Boston Scott complement Wentz really good. I really like their fit, and they're both young guys, potential guys to get even better and grow with Carson Wentz. And then you throw in Jordan Howard. He's that guy. He's your power runner and stuff like that. The running back position deserves an A. They were spectacular this season, man. Easy for those guys.
Wow. I also gave the running back position an A across the board again. That is awesome. And I love Justin's point about Deuce Staley, man. Not enough praise can go to Mr. Deuce Staley. All right. And this obviously leads into the next question. Should Eagles fans be concerned about Deuce Staley leaving the Philadelphia Eagles if he doesn't get a promotion this offseason? Go ahead, Steven.
Oh, this guy, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and give him all the credit for the growth of running back, because that's clearly like he's mastered that role here. And, if he doesn't get a promotion, because you saw guys like Mike Groh, who was a former wide receiver coach here, get a promotion. You saw how that turned out. A few other guys in the building got promotions. I think we got to kind of chill out with promoting from within. But if there was anybody that deserves it, it's Deuce Staley, man. He's our running back coach in the league. And I'm even hearing from some better football minds than me that are kind of saying he has more of a fingerprint on like the offense than like your typical running back coach does. And if the Eagles hire somebody, to be their offensive coordinator, whoever that may be, you got to consider Deuce Staley's agent may push for him. I know this is like his home and everything like that. His agent may push for him to go and find, better opportunity out there. So they got to do whatever they can to retain him, whether that's promoting him, giving him whatever role it is, increasing his role. They got to keep him, man. Deuce Staley is a stud.
What about you, Justin?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything Steven said. He's really, I don't know if he, I'd be fine with it if they promoted him to offensive coordinator, but I think you really need to look from out within, somebody who knows how to work with quarterbacks well and help Wentz out. But yeah, Deuce, really great guy. We haven't really seen any, signs of like him not wanting to stay. So I don't know, maybe he just wants to be a running back coach. He might be okay with that. And I know he still does have at least a year left on his contract from what I read. So we can still have him for next year and then see what happens after next season. But we'll definitely have him for next season at least.
All right, let's move on to the offensive line. 19th best in rushing yards per attempt, 10th best in the NFL, and fewest penalties per game. And they had the 12th best QB sack percentage at 6.4%. I think the biggest injury to the Eagles this season was Brandon Brooks. Man, that injury was a killer. He was literally on the top of the game. You saw Jason Kelce get first team All-Pro. And then you saw Lane Johnson. When he was on the field, Carson Wentz was literally at his best. What grade would you give the offensive line, Justin? Go ahead, man.
I'd give them an A-, honestly. I mean, sure, they had a bad start to the season. It was a little shaky, but if you guys remember the whole preseason, I don't even know how many starters actually played the whole preseason to get warmed up. I mean, sure, they practiced at training camp, all that stuff, but it really did take them a couple games there to kind of get back into the shape of their elite play. And throughout the season, they showed that they're, an elite offensive line in the NFL. And Andre Dillard also showed promise when he was on the left side. I mean, that Seattle game was rough when they shifted him over there. But, I mean, like he said, he never played right tackle ever in his career. And he said it was like writing with the other hand. And that's a tough position. So I just think that was a bad mistake from the coaching staff to put him in that spot. But I'm looking forward to seeing him develop. And hopefully Brandon Brooks can get a speedy recovery and we can have the whole offensive line back for the next season.
How about you, Steven?
Yeah, so I would definitely I'd give this offensive line, I'd give them a B+. We always sit here and talk about, especially the media talks about the injuries to skilled positions. All you hear about is no Alshon Jeffrey, no Deshaun Jackson, yada, yada. You have to realize this team was playing without Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson for a stretch. And, those two guys are arguably the best at their positions. Brandon Brooks was playing out of his mind this season, coming back after that injury, which is just crazy to me, And the fact that they were able to throw in guys there and rotate and just manage to get the job done and even play pretty well at times on that right side of the offensive line. I mean, they were great, man. I easily give them a B+. And then, like you said, Justin, I liked the Andre Dillard pick at the time. I thought it was really smart. And even in his rookie year, I thought he has shown some flashes and potential there. Jason Peters, look, man, we'll get into that, free agency's coming up. It was a frustrating season, man. Howie Roseman owned up to it in the press conference. He has a lot of heart for some of the guys, and he kind of lets that get in the way of doing his job. I don't know if Jason Peters really deserves. I'm sorry, I know he's been great here for so long, but I just recall so many false starts and stuff from him. So it's frustrating. I'm not going to sit here and bash the guy the whole time. I give O-line a B+, considering all those things.
I'm right also around a B+. I think you look at Brandon Brooks, dude, he's signed through 2024. Then you look at Lane Johnson, he's signed through 2025. So there's real hope. Who knows what's going to happen with Jason Kelce. But Jason Kelce, man, whether he retires or not, dude, 89, he started 89 straight games. That for a team like the Eagles that have been decimated by injuries these last few years, dude, he's the anchor, man. He is legit the anchor. And then you look at the other guys, like Andre Dillard, like you said, showed flashes. Matt Pryor stepped in and did a really good job. Isaac Seumalo, whether you like him or not, he was pretty solid. He was pretty consistent. He only missed 2 snaps this season. And we talked a little bit about Deuce Staley. Another guy that deserves some love is Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach. I thought he did a really good job. I'm also in that B+ range for the offensive line. Let's move on to tight end. All right, so you had Zach Ertz leading the team in receptions. Then you had him leading the team in touchdowns. Then you had Dallas Goedert. What was your take on the tight end position? Go ahead, Steven.
They could probably deserve an A. I know Zach's production went down this season compared to previous seasons, but still your lead guy, still reliable, something like that. And look, man, if you're gonna take any from like I know, Dallas, and he continues to show potential. Really liked what I saw at a season. I mean, he's always going to be in the blocking game, but passing wise, I mean, I recall that one game he had, I think it was over was it, like a 9 reception game, 100 receiving yards. Like he just continues to show flashes. And the fact that Dallas Goedert is the second best tight end in this roster, you could probably give the tight end position an A. I'll go with a B+ though.
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I'd give it a B+. I'm leaning towards more of an A- just because they were pretty much the main receiving options the whole, like, for half of the season. I think they stepped up and did. I mean, for tight ends, they played exceptionally well. And I was really happy to see Goddard really develop. Also, like Sanders, Goddard's he's in his second year. So his third year, it's going to be exciting to watch him too. But Goddard had a couple of bad drops here and there. That's obviously something he needs to work on. But overall, Goddard, I'm looking forward to seeing him and Zach Ertz be our next Hernandez and Gronk. So I'm looking forward to it.
On the field.
Yeah, on the field, yeah.
I'm
You don't
right.
have to worry about those guys.
Yeah, those are two great guys right there.
I'm in that A- range, which is so weird to me because before we get into the wide receiver spot, obviously things are going to shift a little bit. Because I had the quarterback position at B+, I had the running back position at an A, I had the offensive line at a B+, and now I have the tight end at an A-. Why was the Eagles' offense so average? And it's amazing to me that when you dissect these positions, that it was such an average offense. I think we need to throw Doug Peterson's play calling in here, maybe. Obviously, the injuries account for a lot because they had to change. They had to kind of shift from the 12 personnel early on in the season, and then everything else. So it's just it's so frustrating that the pieces are there, it's just not translating.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to wide receiver. Woo! Go ahead, Steven.
All right, well, this is going to totally answer your question, Chris. Look, look, man, like, if we're going by like a letter grade book system, is C average? I guess we'll go average. They're not even a C. I'm sorry. Like, I don't care what the injuries were. I know you got production out of Greg Ward and stuff like that towards the end of the season. It only took how long to get that production out of him and find the guy. The wide receiver position, I mean, I'd give it like a D, somewhere in that range. I mean, like, even when Alshon was healthy, he wasn't producing really what you'd like to see out of him. I mean, I know he had that really good Miami game, but I mean, too little, too late, man. Like, I don't know if he was playing injured. Continues to be a problem in the locker room for what we're hearing and stuff like that. He'll deny it. I can't really bust on Deshaun Jackson. I mean, that injury is just so unfortunate. Nelson Aguilar, considering how well he performed that, the year we won the Super Bowl, he was looking like a really good guy. I mean, he has so many drops that just stick in my head, and just there's other plays too that you might forget. But the wide receiver position just was not good this year at all. That's what hurt the offense. That position continues to be more important in today's NFL, and the Eagles got to address it this offseason, man. And that's why we were an average football team this year. 9-7 is basically average, man. So the wide receivers deserve a D, in my opinion.
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I'd give it a D-ish. I'd give it a D. I remember going into training camp, and they were all taking the pictures. It was Deshaun, Alshon, Ertz, like all of them, and we're all like so pumped. And then like after week 1, Deshaun goes down, and I really think this offseason the Eagles, or like this past one, the Eagles focused on getting Deshaun as the focal point of the offense. And when he went down, they were just like, what do we do now? And I think that was a really bad decision by them to rely on a player who hasn't stayed healthy for all 16 games. And I don't know how, but I mean, this injury was obviously more significant the past seasons. But Alshon Jeffrey also was very disappointing this season. And Nelson Aguilar, I mean, I can talk about that guy. I imagine he's out of here, but we'll see what happens. And obviously J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, the guy they drafted. And then you go see DK Metcalf out there in the Seahawks game making big plays after big plays, and this guy can't even get on the field. Boston Scott and Miles Sanders, I'm pretty sure, had more receiving yards than J.J. Arcega-Whiteside did. Those are two running backs who had more receiving yards than who was supposed to step up when those guys went down. And then I'd maybe give this a D+ because of Greg Ward when he came in. I think he maybe moved the D up to a D+ because he kind of revived the offense a little bit from the wide receiver position. But overall, it was a disaster and that's something they definitely need to address. Probably the number one thing.
Fully agree, although I'm giving them an F. Straight up F. You look at the top 3 receivers, Alshon, Deshaun, Aguilar, gave you nothing. Then you look at J-Jaw. This guy was a deer in headlights at the start of the season. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Justin, because when we were looking for guys to step up in that like middle of the season time frame, all right, Miles Sanders was by far the best receiver on this team.
Yeah.
That speaks volumes. And then I go to Greg Ward. Greg Ward was everything for the Eagles offense and that playoff push. I really hope, just like I mentioned with Boston Scott, that gives him a lock for the 2020 roster. Thank you, Greg Ward. Let's move on to the defense. All right, so we're going to start with defensive tackle. You got Fletcher Cox, you got Tim Jernigan. Malik Jackson getting hurt was a major injury at the start of the season. Go ahead, Steven. What's your grade for the defensive tackle position?
So we're doing strictly defensive tackle, not the defensive line as a whole?
Yeah, let's break it up because I think there are things to talk about with each of those.
Yeah, like, look, it sucks when you're grading positions. Like that Malik Jackson injury, that's another thing, dude. I forget about that at times when we sit here and list off the injuries. That could have, like,
changed everything.
If he was healthy this season, who knows, because you really see, like, when you watch playoff football, how important it is to have a good defensive line, especially interior guys like that. Fletcher Cox, man, like, there were stretches early on in the season I didn't really know, like, where he was at times. And it's really a shame because I love the guy and he's arguably the best player on this entire football team. But you really saw he was dominant, man, the last stretch of this season. Like, we sit here and talk about Carson Wentz. Fletcher Cox, man, I tell you what, he was special the last couple weeks of the season. Considering all those things, like you signed Malik Jackson in the offseason, Fletcher Cox is arguably the best at that position in the league. He's up there, whatever you want to say there. I'd give him a B. They definitely should have been better than what they were. It's a shame Malik Jackson got hurt. Fletcher Cox, like I said, disappeared at times, man. Like, I don't know. You just couldn't seem to find him. How do you miss a big guy like that, So I'd give him a B, the interior.
Love it. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I'd give the defensive tackle position a B minus. If you guys remember, Fletcher Cox did have an injury towards the end of that season, that turf toe or something. It was something with his foot. Yeah. He did have surgery on, and he didn't really play in training camp or anything really. So I think it was really it took a big hit on the beginning of his season, and I think it really took until like the Dolphins game, like around then, to really get back into shape, into like playing like the defensive tackle he is. And then Malik Jackson, that guy, I think he's played 8 seasons and he hasn't missed a snap, or he hasn't got hurt at least.
Wow.
And then he played like the first game of the season, boom, he's gone. And that's something, like when I was talking about with John about his injuries, like Malik, you can't blame the front office for that. That guy never got hurt until now. That was just a freak injury. Yeah. But then Timmy Jernigan, he got hurt midway through the season, but he came back and actually played
very well.
Timmy Jernigan actually played really well, like towards the end of the season there. But it's an injury-filled defensive line too. But overall, like they played well when it mattered in the end. So they just couldn't get it done.
What grade would you give him?
I'd say like a B minus.
All right. I'm in that B range. I thought the Eagles. I mean, Steven, you really nailed everything. All my points that I was going to say, you absolutely crushed it. I'm in that B range. They still really did a good job against the run. So I'm in that B range. Like you said, Justin, Tim Jernigan really looked strong when he came back against that Seattle playoff game. And then Fletcher Cox, he was just absolutely dominant in that playoff push. Let's move on to defensive end. Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat, Vinny Curry. Lead us off, Justin. What was your grade and take on the defensive end position?
I'd probably give him around the same grade, maybe a little bit less. I really like Derek Barnett coming out of the draft. I mean, he hasn't disappointed me, but he hasn't impressed me. He's just kind of been, he's just kind of been the same for me. I do think he needs to work on. I don't know if it's going on, but there are a lot of plays. See him and that's the things like the Packers game where he knocked out, I forget whoever that was. Yeah. There were a lot of plays that we could have got back for roughing the passer, whatever it was. And then you always see him like talking trash to the other team, like getting in their face. I don't know. I think he needs to work on that a little bit. He's still young. I think he's only like 22. And then Brandon Graham played really well. He was pretty much the anchor for the defensive end position. And then Josh Sweat was a good surprise here and there. He showed compared to past seasons. And then Vinny Curry was here and there. He didn't really play too, but he did have a block kick against the Seahawks. You know, they could be better, but they weren't that bad, I'd say.
Go ahead, Steven, man.
Yeah, like the thing is, like I sat here and gave the defensive tackle position a B. I would give the defensive end position probably like a C plus. I'd give them, and I thought, considering the talent that the defensive end position had, I thought it played better considering the expectations we had compared to the defensive tackle position. But Fletcher Cox is such a dominant player that even having a shaky big part of the season, I'd still give it a B. But yeah, like, look, Brandon Graham I thought was pretty consistent this season. Like, I don't know if you guys remember last year, we were talking about there was times where he disappeared. I thought Brandon Graham was rather consistent this year. And yeah, like Josh Sweat, he would come around and have a sack every now and then. Derek Barnett, yeah, like you, Justin, I was a big fan of him coming out of the draft. I don't know. I mean, I kind of was hoping he would have contributed a little bit more, and if he did, I would probably give this position a better grade. So yeah, you know, considering all these things, I'd give the defensive end position a C plus.
I'm right around a C, guys. I look at Brandon Graham. He played all 16 games, 8.5 sacks. He was first on the team with 15 tackles for loss, second on the team with quarterback hits, led all defensive linemen with 50 tackles. So Brandon Graham was okay. And then you look at Derek Barnett. I think this guy is still a major question mark. This is a guy that was able to get, make some quarterback hits, but the sack totals just didn't happen. And that's kind of been his legacy so far with the Eagles. He gets there, he just can't get home. I liked Vinny Curry during that last playoff stretch. I think he had like 5 sacks. Like, that was very impressive. But overall, it just needs to be better. And I think this was a position, as the same with Malik Jackson going down. I think we kind of expected Derek Barnett to take that next step. I don't know if that happened, and I think there could be an argument that he took a step back. He is still inconsistent. He is still a major question mark for 2020. That is still a position that needs to be addressed. Let's move on to linebacker. You got Nigel Bradham and Kamu Grugier-Hill. I'll lead us off. Nigel Bradham is a free agent. Get out. You got $9 million if he's gone. I think he is as good as gone. And then you have Kamu. He's a great special teamer. I think he is also a free agent. I think this is a position of major need heading into this offseason. I don't know how high of a draft pick I would spend on a linebacker, but at least a 3rd round pick, 4th round pick for sure. Linebacker, dude, it was awful. I'm going D. What about you, Justin?
I'd give it a C minus. Nate Gary kind of showed some flashes. He actually was probably one of the better linebackers, in my opinion, towards the end of the season there. Nigel Bradham actually played pretty well at the end of the season also. I just think he's getting older. He's not as fast. He's a big hitter, but I don't know. I think it would be good to get some youth on the linebacker position as well. Kamu's a good captain, but he's kind of leaving the season on a bad note with the whole story of him telling the reporters that he had a concussion and didn't tell people. And I don't know. They gotta invest some youth position because they have barely any depth there. So
for sure,
I'll give it a C minus.
For sure, a position they need to get faster. They need to get faster across the board, but linebackers especially. Go ahead, Steven.
Yeah, I agree with you, Chris. I would definitely give that group a D. Look, man, like, this is so frustrating. That position has been like completely ignored the last couple of years. Look, man, like, Nigel Bradham was fine at times over the years. I agree. I would definitely not re-sign him. Like, Howie's been addressing that position by signing undrafted guys, and you look around at these other teams, the linebacker position is so important. You got to be able to be fast. Yeah, we need speed there. I mean, come on, like, the guys we have there. I mean, you mentioned Nate Gary. I don't know. I just wasn't seeing a whole lot of production out of that position. I mean, who else was there? Kamu. he's always been hurt, and like you said, he's a special teams guy. Like, can we address that position this year? I would definitely use a third or fourth round pick to address it. Need some speed. And another thing is this secondary is bad, and when your linebackers are bad in pass coverage too, that's a recipe for disaster, man. That's got to get fixed.
Yeah.
That's a D. They get a D, man.
Can I add something real quick?
Go right ahead.
They also did cut LJ Fort, who ended up being a really good linebacker for the Ravens. I don't know what that was all about.
Really?
Did he really?
Well, LJ Fort was pretty solid for the Ravens. He had a pass breakup last night, actually, in the game.
I had no idea.
I was pretty upset about that. And also, yeah, TJ Edwards, also the undrafted rookie,
Right.
he played pretty solid in special teams and linebacker. I think he's someone that they really like, and I think he's going to be a point of that linebacking position. I could see him taking the lead, jump there soon.
Awesome. And just like Steven said, let's talk about the secondary. Cornerback, what a hot mess of a position this is. Lead us off, Justin. What was your grade for the cornerback position? Go ahead, man.
Okay, well, I'd give it. I wouldn't say like it was that. Maybe I'm just optimistic, but I wouldn't give it like I would give it like a C minus. Like Jalen Mills, he was out, the whole start of that season, and when he came in, he did step up. He made some plays. Like, he was, in my opinion, he was better than what we had there before. He was, and Ronald Darby, disaster. He'd show like some solid plays here and there, but then he would give up the ones that really, really matter. And then Cre'Von LeBlanc comes in. Cre'Von LeBlanc might have had like the best couple of games compared to like the whole cornerbacks had this whole season. I was very pleased by him. Avonte Maddox, solid. I mean, he was iffy here and there.
Yeah.
Who else is there? Am I missing anybody?
Russell Douglas.
Sidney Jones.
Russell Douglas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Russell Douglas. Again, so he was average, but overall, like, they need to get better, younger. They need a true shutdown corner. When's the last time they've had a true shutdown corner? Like, I don't even remember. So that's something they need to work on. Invest in it. Something. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy.
Go ahead, Steven.
Yeah, so, like, when you really look back at this season, the thing that hurt this team the most was the skilled positions. I had given the wide receivers, I'm pretty sure I gave them a D. I'd give the corners, the secondary, a D as well. Howie Roseman, basically, like, re-signing Ronald Darby was, like, really all I can recall us doing. And, like, he was questionable last year, never staying healthy and, just being, like, a shell of himself if he ever was, like, a quality corner. Jalen Mills finally made his return. Like, we're sitting here trying to convince ourselves that guys like that can come in and be what we need them to be. And really, when I look at that position and some of the guys on the team, like, I'm not going to sit here and say they all suck or anything like that. Like, they can certainly contribute and help your team win, but not as like one or two guys, you know what I mean? Like, they could arguably this offseason try and snag. They definitely need one guy you can put on the other team's best receiver, but maybe even another, you know what I mean? Like, it's a matchups league and stuff like that. And you had mentioned, like, somebody who I was so high on coming into the season, and I was like you, Justin, I was trying to be optimistic. I loved what I saw out of Avonte Maddox last season, and I was like, maybe he could continue that. He was shaky this season, I didn't see a step forward. If anything, it was a step back, and that's fine. I mean, he was really good last year. Let's just hope he has a good year 3. And another thing we were really banking on was Sidney Jones. I don't know if you guys remember, all we heard was about him in training camp, like, I was really hoping he was going to be a guy he was going to develop this season, and it just didn't happen at all. I know he had like pass breakups against the Giants and Redskins and stuff like that. It was a nice little run there and stuff like that. I'm not completely writing him off. I think he should probably get another year or 2 here. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, man, I give it a D, the secondary.
There was also a guy named Orlando Scandrick. I remember that guy too.
Oh, man.
He was on our team, yeah. So,
Ooh.
all right, you can go, Chris. All right, I just had to say that.
Just like the wide receiver position, this is the same thing. It's an F. You have Ronald Darby and Jalen Mills. These are two guys you saw the backs more than the fronts. They got burned consistently throughout the year. And then you had Sidney Jones. I think he made like literally one play all year. I don't know if it was versus the Redskins or the Giants. It was a big play. I forget which team. But, I mean, just a total forgettable wash of a season for Sidney Jones. Didn't show anything. And then Rasul Douglas, he shouldn't be out there for as much as he was. He's starting 6 games. That's not his role. And then you had Avonte Maddox, like you said, Steven. I thought he took 2 steps back. This was a guy that was making plays all over the field last year. I thought it was going to be a huge season for him in that slot. 0 interceptions, 10 pass deflections, not good enough. And then you had Cre'Von LeBlanc. And it's something to say, as soon as he stepped on the field, he just looked like such an upgrade over what they had. I loved what I saw from Cre'Von. I'm a little biased towards Cre'Von LeBlanc. I'll be honest. He's my boy. But overall, enough. Just that is a major position of need, just like wide receiver in this draft and free agency. And then you look at free agency. You have Darby, Mills. They're free agents. I think LeBlanc is a free agent. So there could be a whole new secondary next year. And that leads into safety because Malcolm Jenkins and not Malcolm Jenkins. He needs to be extended. But Rodney McLeod is a free agent. Talk about the safety position. Go ahead, Steven.
Yeah, so I would give that position. Let's just start off by saying it was great to have Rodney McLeod back. He was one of the many injured players last year from what I remember. Dude, we were talking about Chris, you had mentioned Jason Kelce being, like Mr. Consistent, never missing a game, tough guy, all that kind of stuff. Malcolm Jenkins, man, when has he sat out of a play for like a breather or anything like that? It's incredible, man. That guy, that's a role model right there, man. And, people are saying, I don't know if I want to extend him. If there's a guy who deserves an extension, it's Malcolm Jenkins. And he was great, man. One of the better safeties in the league. Rodney McLeod, he's a consistent player. He's a very nice player. Most teams like him to be your other safety out there as well. Just got to get the right guys in the secondary, you know what I mean? Because you got, Malcolm Jenkins. I know he's a versatile player. You can move him around and stuff like that. But ideally, you want him back there playing that safety position. So I'd give the safety position like a B or a B plus around there, I would say.
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I'd give it around a B or B plus. Steven pretty much said what I was going to say. Malcolm Jenkins, great player. He pretty much was the best player on defense, I'd say, overall the whole season, because Fletcher Cox really didn't step into his role, into his elite level until like the end of the season. So I say Malcolm was probably the best player on defense. I just think it's going to be tough. I don't know if they're going to – I could see them not extending him just because does anyone know how old he is?
He's 32, 33.
Yeah, because for an extension, he's probably going to get money, like the best safety money in the league. Like, I don't know if that's something that they want to put money into. He's getting older. He did show signs of slowing down a little bit. But yeah, I really wish this past draft when they drafted, if you guys remember, a guy named Clayton Thorson in the 5th round, they could have drafted a safety there maybe and had him like sit behind Malcolm and Rodney this season and kind of get him ready for this upcoming season. So it was something again, one other thing that they missed on. So yeah, I'd give it a B minus, B-ish area, somewhere in there.
Not enough good things can be said about Malcolm Jenkins, dude. He played 16 games. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure he played the last 2 years 100% of the snaps.
That's crazy.
And on special teams too, not just defense.
He had
incredible.
He had 4 forced fumbles this year, 2.5 sacks, 80 tackles, 9 quarterback hits, 6 tackles for loss. Man, that is such a huge question mark heading into this offseason. If it was me personally regarding his contract, I would give him the money now and say, go ahead and test free agency. Does he deserve to get paid like the best safety in football? Absolutely. But that is a scary area for the Eagles to be, given how much cap, issues there are going to be in the near future. And then you look at Rodney McLeod, dude, another 16 games, 2 interceptions, 74 tackles, just a very consistent group. I give this like right around like a B. I think a B is pretty fair. And then we go to special teams, and then we're going to talk about free agency a little more. Let's talk about Jake Elliott. He was 22 of 26, and he missed 2 extra points. He had all 4 field goal misses were 40 yards and beyond. And then you have Cam Johnston, who I thought was a pretty average punter this year. What was your take? Go ahead, Steven, on the special teams.
I'd probably give that you know, are we saying like kicking or just special teams as a whole?
As a whole, just all.
Kicking. Yeah, C plus. I mean, it's really unfortunate. Justin can probably recall this. I was pretty heated when Jake Elliott decided to miss, a couple kicks there after he gave him a nice little extension and stuff like that. I went on a little rant. It's probably good it was in a private discussion. But yeah, he's a good. Like, look, man, the kicking position, like, it's just a crazy dynamic in football, man, when you really think about it, and I'd rather have Jake Elliott than not have him. I'd give him a C plus. He can definitely improve. He was really good in years past. He probably deserves the extension, so I take back what I ever said in the past. C plus.
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, as far as kicking and like the kicker and the punter, like Cam Johnson and Jake Elliott, I give them a higher grade than the receiving and then the defending kicks, kickoffs, and those kind of things. There are a lot of stupid things that they did on punt returns and kick returns that caused penalties. Or they didn't return a punt for a touchdown this year, did they? Or they didn't return a kick for a touchdown?
Nope.
And anything. They got something that the Eagles lacked this year was special teams help. I don't know. Sproul's injury also did hurt him, but he wasn't even looking that good really when he was in there. They definitely need to figure out a punt returner that they can put in there. Maybe Boston Scott is the guy, but we just haven't seen enough of it yet.
All right. Yeah, I'm right around that C range. It was pretty average, I thought, for special teams. Let's move on to free agency and some positions of need that the Eagles need to target in 2020. We already kind of touched on it. Personally, for me, it's wide receiver and cornerback. To be honest, I would spend at least 2 or 3 of those first 3 draft picks for the Eagles on wide receiver. I think Carson needs first and foremost playmakers, especially on the edge, and then cornerback. I think we really need to kind of finally get it right at the cornerback position. And then I think following third is probably linebacker. What about you, Steven?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like, skilled positions, number one, wide receiver and secondary, easily, use your picks up there. As far as what comes after that, the fact that we've just neglected that linebacker position, I'd probably say that, after the, wide receiver and secondary, maybe look into a safety, because your guys are getting up there in age, and, I would prefer Malcolm Jenkins being on this team, but who knows what happens. Justin had mentioned, I don't want to steal your fire, I'm sure you'll get into it, addressing the center/guard position. That's definitely something they could consider. I did hear, I don't know how much you guys follow, college football and stuff like that. I don't really follow it a whole lot. I kind of just pay attention to the draft players and stuff like that. Somebody had mentioned, I saw it somewhere, next season, apparently there's a stud center coming out.
Yeah,
I forget what school it is. Man, that could be interesting. I know that's a long time away. That's over a year away. So we'll see, man. We'll see.
What about you, Justin? What are some positions of need moving forward?
Well, are we just going with the draft right now and then going into free agency?
Whatever you want to talk about, man.
Well, I'll just go with the draft. So with the first and second pick, we need to do wide receiver, cornerback. I don't care which way it's done. I'd prefer wide receiver in the first round. How stacked it is, you might as well just get the top of that stack. But it's whatever. I'll be happy if they do that, and then probably draft another wide receiver. I'd be happy with that. And then, as Steven was saying, center is a big need, I think, that is underlooked right now. Jason Kelce's getting older, and he did contemplate retiring this past offseason, I think, or maybe it was the offseason before that. So I think it's something that they need to look at. And then obviously safeties with Rodney McLeod and Malcolm Jenkins, both free agents this offseason. Worst case scenario, they're both gone. I don't think that's going to happen. But you need something. You need youth at that position. And then you also need youth at linebacker. So those are pretty much the areas that I would assess. And then, so the free agency is before the draft, right? Or is it? I'm trying to think.
I'm pretty sure it's after. No, it's before. It's before.
Because if it's before, then there's a guy like Robbie Anderson out there. You could. They have $46.9 million, according to a report I saw this morning. If you could invest in Robbie Anderson, a guy who's proven, who can come in and step up, doesn't have to develop.
Chris is a Temple guy, right?
Boy,
yeah.
bring him home.
You could get him and then only have to draft one wide receiver. So it all depends on what they do in free agency too.
A lot of it's money, man. A lot of it's money. I would love to have Robbie Anderson come home and have like Robbie Anderson, Deshaun Jackson. And before we start this pod, if you follow the Blue Root TPL, we're going to start putting out some Eagles draft target articles. Justin did one on CeeDee Lamb, and I have one coming out on Henry Ruggs, two of the top wide receivers in this draft. And we were both kind of arguing who would be better fit. I think we kind of came to an agreement that CeeDee Lamb is definitely a better wide receiver, but I would argue that Henry Ruggs is a better fit for what the Eagles need. Be sure to look out for those articles on thepaintlines.com. And lastly, we're going to wrap it up. It looks like the Cleveland Browns got their new head coach just today. It was just announced. Looks like Jim Schwartz is coming back as defensive coordinator for the Eagles. Are you okay with that? Is that bad? Go ahead, Steven.
Oh, I'm completely fine with that. I know another thing, some people think I'm like a Jim Schwartz hater. Justin can definitely account for that. Look, I'm A-okay with him coming back. Like, look, man, he's definitely probably one of the better defensive coordinators in the league. I think it's really unfortunate, really just like the talent he's been giving at like such important positions on that defense. You know, like I know we have a good defensive line and stuff like that, but the linebacker position has been a D over the last couple of years. Secondary's been a D over the last couple of years. Like you got to address those positions, and then you can really judge fairly how good Jim Schwartz is. So I will welcome him back with open arms, man.
Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are underappreciating Jim Schwartz. He's actually a really good defensive coordinator. He's just given a bad group of talent there in the linebacker and cornerback position. I really do think that if we got a number one corner and, you know, if we kept some of those guys that we have now, like the defense would look a lot better than what it was. I think he can't control, obviously, what the corners are doing out there on the field. Like he just has to throw them out there and do what he can do best with them. And then same with the linebackers. So, I mean, you've seen their ability to play really well at home. Like we said, like the way the defense was playing that game against Seattle, I honestly think the Eagles would have won that game if Wentz was the quarterback the whole game. But I'm happy that Schwartz is back. So,
I am on the fence with this. I have gone back and forth with this since the end of the season. I recognize that Jim Schwartz is a pretty good defensive coordinator. He's the king of the bend, not break defense. His defense has allowed 30 points just 8 times since 2016. So it's effective. I don't think Jim Schwartz is anything special. He's just an above average defensive coordinator. However, I recognize that like if you let him go, the Eagles could do much worse than Jim Schwartz. On the other end, I think that it would be a good idea to get some like fresh ideas and freshen things up for the Eagles defense by bringing in someone new. Jim Schwartz, you know, has left his secondary to die at times. He's not been good at forcing turnovers. So I agree that he doesn't have the best personnel. Giving up way too many 3rd and longs for my liking. I recognize that his home defense is really good too, but guess what, guys? You have to be able to play on the road as well. So for me personally, I've been going back and forth. I've been wavering on Jim Schwartz. I think I'm leaning more towards him coming back. He's going to be back. There's no question about that. All right, so me personally, I would lean towards, yes, I'm okay with him coming back. Any last comments before we wrap this up? Go ahead, Steven.
Well, I actually was just going to butt in. I didn't want to interrupt you. You had said we need to be able to play defense on the road. Can we please tell this team to do that? My goodness, man. It is so frustrating. Like,
or more than
that's why I'm frustrated that this Eagles season is over, because the 76ers, man, are taking years off of my life. Don't even get me started. But look, man, I'm glad to be on this podcast. I haven't been on in, you know, it's been a couple months, so I'm glad to be back. Glad to be with you guys talking birds again, and hopefully, you know, we can get back together and do this again, maybe come draft time or something. So
anytime, man. Any freaking time. Last comments, Justin?
Pretty much everything Steven said again. But other than that, just to address the offensive coordinator real quick, I think Jim Caldwell should be the number one option there. Yeah, and then Deuce Staley right underneath there. And then wide receiver coach, I don't know much about that, but as long as it's anything better than what they had, you can't. I mean, I don't think you can get much worse than what they had. So anything's an upgrade. Just like Mike Scott, when he's gone, it'll be an upgrade for the Sixers. So,
Make sure you check out thepaintlines.com. We've got some Eagles draft targets in the makings. Make sure you check out Justin's article on CeeDee Lamb. That'll be out in the near future. Follow Justin on Twitter at Justin J. Bradley. And as well, make sure you check out Steven's YouTube channel, Philly Sports Fanatic, and check him out on Twitter at Philly Fanatic YT. He did a top takeaways from the Eagles season. Check that out at thepaintlines.com. For Steven, for Justin, for myself, thanks for watching, guys. Stay awesome.
Sixers win it! Wow! Oh man, Embiid just posterized Russell Westbrook.
You love the Philadelphia Eagles. Let me get a